Um, So welcome, Aswin. So most of our participants are the same only. So I am not again introducing you. Okay, and let's start. Mm,
Sure, sir. Thank you.
mm,
Once again, thanks for having me here. I'm very happy to give this lecture.
mm.
So today the plan is to give you like a brief overview of reinforcement learning, and also try to connect some of the the deep reinforcement learning parts to the existing RL work. It might feel like I'm like covering a lot of ground. So if you have questions in between, like please stop me right away and you know ask me as I give the lecture. Thanks. So so today I'm trying to cover like a bunch of topics. So basically, first is what is RL, and then what is the basic structure and an RL is an MDP. So we will see what is an MDP and how to solve an MDP and so on, and then we'll get to what is reinforcement learning, where you do value based learning, and the two methods, which is value based and policy based. We'll briefly cover both of them, and in the process, we'll also discuss a bit about how deep learning, which we covered like a week ago, how that can be used to improve how we do RL. So let's get to the first part. So so if you remember last time we did supervised learning, which is you learn from a teacher. What does that mean? That is, you have data that comes like X and Y. So you know that this is the input and this is the output that you expect, and you somehow collect this data set from people, and you train a model that tries to predict Y given X, right? And similarly, there's unsupervised learning. We did not cover it in the deep learning. Perhaps it was covered in the machine learning lecture. So unsupervised learning would be like k-means and so on. You discover the inherent structure. But reinforcement learning is different in the sense that it tries to say that, like, you only get a terminal reward at the end. You do a bunch of actions and you get a reward at the end, and you want to figure out which is the correct way of acting in this environment, so that you can maximize the reward. So the feedback is more in the form of a reward, as opposed to telling you what exactly to do. In that sense, it differs from supervised learning. So just to make this more concrete, so let's say I play a bunch of actions and I can tell whether environment tells me whether I'm right or wrong. That would be reinforcement learning. But on the other hand, if I'm told which action to play at each time, and then I use that data to learn a model, that would be supervised learning. So okay, what is reinforcement learning? You want to learn to make good decisions based on where you are, right? Good decisions in the sense that you're trying to maximize your reward. um, in some sense, this is more realistic than just doing standard supervised learning, because the supervision is very minimal. So how do you learn? So typically there's like a whole exploration issue in RL. So you learn by trial and error. You try out different things and see what works, and then you try to figure out the best way of doing a certain task. So how is this whole problem formulated? So you have a state. Sorry, did some have a question? Okay. Um, so how is this formulated? So you are at a certain state, and at each state you can take an action, and when you take an action, the environment provides a reward back to you, right? Depending on where you come from, people use both reward and cost and various terms, so they're all the same. So as opposed to supervised learning, if you're at a state, you're given which action will lead to the best reward. So you directly go from the state to the action, right? In that sense, RL is clearly different from supervised learning. So, okay. So in RL, we usually assume that the environment is not known to us. So there can be various underlying, you don't make any assumptions about the environment as well, often. Um, So the agent has to learn a policy mapping. By that, we mean that for every state, what is the action it has to play? That is what the agent is trying to learn. And one standard version of RL is where you're trying to maximize the total reward. So again, just going back to a more you know uh, futuristic version of the same setting, you have an environment that gives you observations. Based on that, you make an action, and based on your action, you get a reward back. So yeah, similarly, the environment gets an action, it emits an observation, and you take the next action, and so on. So the cycle just keeps going. So what are the challenges that RL has as opposed to what supervised learning has is you have constant feedback in the form of reward as opposed to having labels that help you train. Uh, so there is some sort of a delayed consequences effect. What I mean by that is I take an action right now, but the effect of the actions might come much later, in the sense that I might get a reward because of that much later, as opposed to getting right away. And there's a need for trial and error, in the sense that I need to explore what actions I can do, as opposed to supervised learning, where I'm just given what action to do and I just train for it. And there is non-stationarity. There could be non-stationarity in the sense that things can behave differently as time progresses. Um, and finally, it's like there are multiple challenges that come with having online data. In machine learning, I guess in the initial machine learning tutorial, you might have seen that we usually assume in supervised learning that you have IID data. Instead of that, you have online data, which is like, the data is correlated. So that also poses certain challenges. So as a machine learning person, this can be significant. So we will see how these things are handled. So some of the signature tasks that involve RL have been like robot locomotion. So you want to make a robot move, have the ability to control its arms and so on. Another success that kind of helped deep RL become widely adopted and widely popular is Atari games. So deep Q networks was was a landmark paper in this field. Um, and finally, you might have seen the AlphaGo stuff that was everywhere, where this agent trained by DeepMind uh, was able to defeat the world champion. So again, that was also using RL concepts and specifically some aspects of deep learning. So let's see the fundamentals. Now that I've kind of explained how RL is kind of different from supervised learning, and also sold you on like how RL has achieved certain cool things in the past, right? So let's go to the basic framework of how RL works. So yeah, again, to iterate, like if you have any questions, please let me know. So the basic structure is MDP. That we use this to basically model the environment, um, right? So MDPs are like a general framework that to model environments where you have to make decisions where under some sort of uncertainty. So it's defined using these following variables. So let's go over them. The first is like the state space. So people usually have a start state distribution as well. So I'm not including it here. You can have it, right? So state space is like basically where you're acting. So in the space, like for example, if you take the game of Go, it would be all possible positions, board positions, right? Or if you take Atari games, it would be the current whatever pixels that you're seeing on the screen, right? So yeah. A is a set of all possible actions. So in chess, it would be like all the possible legal moves you can make. Or if you're playing Go, then it would be all the actions that you're allowed on your remote control, right? Like that. And then reward function is usually up to the task. So in one can imagine a very simple reward structure where, like, if I win the game, I get a reward of 1, and for all other actions and states, I just get 0, right? So you can have like a very very sparse supervision, reward signals here. Then is transition probabilities. So this is important. So what are transition probabilities? So it's like I'm at a state and I play some action A, and then the transition probability T tells me which state I'm most likely to go to, right? So basically probability that I'll go to S dash, given that I'm at S and take the action A. That is the transition probability. And finally, in certain versions, you can have a discount factor, which says that future rewards count less than immediate rewards, right? So that is a discount factor that people use in when you have infinite horizon MDPs. So
Aswin, just I have
yeah,
a question. So only things these probabilistic things will come when we are representing game or the learning in a stochastic way, right?
yeah, correct.
Hmm. Otherwise, the only SAR is enough, right?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thanks.
Mhm. Um, Yeah. So the way this whole system is set up is that you now have right. You are at state ST and you play AT and you get RT plus one. You then move. You receive RT plus one and then move to ST plus one, right? And so on. You get a whole trajectory, right? That is the whole. That is how the R agent is behaving in the environment. So there's one critical assumption that we make, which is why you have Markov in the whole thing, which is like the Markov assumption, which says that the current state is sufficient, and you don't need the entire trajectory that happened so far, right? So basically, given that I am at this state, I can decide what to do next, and I don't need to remember all the previous states that I visited to arrive at this state. That is the summary of the Markov property. This is like helps. This is often good enough and helps us, remove a lot of mathematical issues and like you know, model this in a neat recursive fashion.
So, uh,
Yeah.
in the reward function, why do we have to state the next state? Because we know the state and the action. So doesn't it defines the next state already?
Sure. It is. It is a general formulation of the reward function. So you can have it just R of SA is enough, and there are certain formulations where you can have R of S A and S dash as well. So for example, you can imagine where the fact that you went to a certain S dash gives you a different reward. So that's a more general formulation of this problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. So yeah, so in RL, the typical assumption I'm going to make is that I don't have access to either the model or the reward function, right? So uh, now I don't have any way of solving for the optimal policy. So instead of that, I had to actually try out what works and what does not work, right? The other approach is to try to estimate these transition probabilities in the reward function and use that to solve for the optimal policy, right? So we'll not do much of the second part, but we'll usually be in the first part for today's lecture. So yeah, so what do we mean by solving MDPs? We either mean learning the optimal policy or learning the optimal value function. So what is the value function? Value function says how good is a certain state or a certain state action pair, right? Given that I'm at a certain state, what is the likelihood that it is going to get me to the optimal, get me to the target state, or how much reward am I going to get? That is generally what the value function is trying to model. Yeah. So what's a good policy? It basically, as I said before, you're trying to maximize for the total reward. So, or you can model the discounted future rewards, which is like, the current reward is worth 1 and the next reward is worth gamma, where gamma is usually between 0 and 1. The next reward is worth gamma square. So you have like a geometric progression here. So you can minimize the discounted sum of rewards. So there are multiple formulations depending on what task you're exactly trying to solve. Yeah, so formally you have pi star, which is like the optimal policy. That is basically here you have the sum of discounted rewards, right? So you have sigma summation over time and gamma power t times the reward that you're getting at every time step, given the assumption that you're acting according to pi, right? So you're trying to find the maximum policy that minimizes this expected sum of discounted rewards. So the expectation is under the transition probabilities and the rewards, right? Um, let's get to the value function. So value function is basically telling, given that I'm at this state, and if I continue to act under a certain policy, what is the total reward I'm going to get, right? It tries to estimate that. So, so essentially, it gives you a picture of like how good a state is, and do I have any possibility that I can win this game or whatever, achieve maximum reward. So there are the two typical popularly used value functions. One is just the v function, which tells you the how good is the state is, and then the other one is a q function, which reasons about how a good state action pair is. So basically it says, given that I'm at state s and I played the action a, how good am I going to be in this game, right? That's the question the q function asks. Very, very similar to the value function, just that you have an additional action that is involved as well. Right. So let's get to the definition of the value function. So as you can see, it's the v pi of s, basically value function under the policy pi for the state s, right? It's nothing but just this is the same thing. It's the sum of discounted rewards, right? In the previous cost function that I defined, it was only conditioned under pi, but here it says that the initial state is also s. So what does it mean? Given that I'm starting at S, and if I continue to use policy pi, what is the expected discounted reward that I'm going to get, right? So basically, I'm asking if I'm at state S and continue to do under pi, how much, what is the possibility that I'm going to get a good reward under whatever the definition of reward is. So similarly, you have the Q function, which says, okay, given that I'm at state S and I played the action A, right? And from then on, I continue to behave under policy pi. Now, what is my discounted sum of rewards, right? Expected discounted sum of rewards. So that's the question Q function is asking. So you can see that from Q, V and Q, the only thing that changed is under the conditioning, you have explicitly stated which action you took as well, right? So, and this action need not be sampled from pi. So this is just like a parameter on its own, right? So, yeah. So just to reiterate about the optimality and the optimal value functions. So here, the optimal value function, you get it when you're acting under the optimal policy, right? And we just choose to write this as v star instead of v pi star, just like a notational thing. And similarly, you have the q star, which says, okay, if you're acting under the optimal policy pi star, what is their value function, right? So usually we want to estimate this, right? The fact that we don't know pi star, we are trying to find it out. So we are trying to get a better and better estimate of v star and v star and q star if in RL, right? So let's see how so just to give you the mapping between these two quantities. So you have so v star of s is nothing but max of a, q star of s comma a, right? So basically the value of that the v function of that particular state is just the whatever is the maximum q value under all possible actions, right? So that is that. And what is the optimal policy? The optimal policy is just acting according to the maximum action once you have the q function, q star, optimal q function. So the standard way in which the v star s works is like there's a neat recursive definition. So you can see so v star s is just like the maximum action I take, and I just substitute the definition of q star, right? So into the next part using basically the first equation here. What happened is that I just so if you recall this definition, so I just expanded the discounted sum of rewards by one step, right? So essentially, you can see that given that I'm state S, there's a probability coming from the transition function, and I have probability of getting a certain reward. And after that, I just like rewrote the rest of it from the next time step, and that would just be v star of S prime, right? So this neat recursive definition is known as the Bellman equation and keeps coming again and again in our lecture. So similarly, the Q star, the Q function has a similar recursive definition, right? So, and you can see that I can replace the V star with the relationship between Q and V, and you can again put this guy back in the sense that you can define this completely in terms of Q, right? So it would just be gamma times max of A and Q star of S comma A, right? So that is the relationship between V and Q. Yeah. So let's now go over one method, value iteration. But one caveat is that the value iteration involves the fact that we know the transition and the reward function, right? Which is usually not the case. But nevertheless, let's go over this method and see how we can generalize or how we can do value learning when we don't know these quantities, right? So the algorithm is very simple. It just takes the Bellman equation and it says that, okay, I see, okay. It basically says Vi plus 1 is just like the max of the Bellman, basically just use the Bellman equation to update. And you have theoretical guarantees that you converge to V star, right? So I'm not going into those details right now, but nevertheless, that is just the algorithm here. Essentially, if you can see, it's just like it's just the application of this equation, just that V star is now replaced by Vi plus 1, and then you're using Vi here inside the recursive definition. Right. So let's just reiterate this algorithm. You initialize that the V value function for all states is 0, and then you recursively update using the Bellman equation, and then you repeat until you converge to V star, right? So I'm of course omitting a lot of details here, but this is the broad picture of the algorithm. So as you can see, to even compute the updates, I need to know the reward function and I need to know the transition function, right? There's no way out. So these are the things that we usually assume are unknown to us in the RL problem, and shortly we'll see how we do this adaptation. So the complexity is like S square A. So basically for you can see how this complexity is coming just from the transition function, right? So for each state, there are multiple states that I can go to and multiple actions I can take to go there. So I have to reason about all of these. So clearly the complexity per iteration is S square A, right? Okay, so I'm not going to cover the theoretical part of it, but here it's basically, you have, you can show that this whole Bellman operator is just like a gamma contraction, and, Vi initialized wherever tends to converges to V star asymptotically. So I'm going to skip that in this part. Right. So let's go to the next part, which is Q value iteration. So just that we are changing value with the Q value, and the same thing holds, right? Just like you had the the Bellman equation for the value function, we're going to substitute that with the Q value, and you get a very similar algorithm, right? And that will be something that we are going to convert or inspire a deep RL kind of approach, which is known as the deep Q learning or the Q learning, right? So what is the value iteration update? So it just says like we update iteratively. Vi plus 1 is just like based on the Bellman update using the previous value function Vi, and V0, which is like the starting of this, is initialized to 0, right? So the Q update is just exactly the same, just that you replaced the value function instead of the Q function. So you just wrote the Bellman equation corresponding to the Q function, right? So let's come to how learning-based methods fit into the whole picture, right? So let's see. Just to recap, why do we need learning? So you often assume that we don't know the P function, which is the transition function, and we don't know the reward function, right? So if I don't know these, there is no way I can make these updates, right? So without knowing these, how do I still figure out the optimal policy? That is the question we ask in learning-based RL. Right. So what happens? So we don't know the we don't know the transition function, and we don't know the reward function, right? So we cannot, there's no way for solving for the policy. But then what can we do, right? We can gather experience and learn by trial and error. So I'm at a certain.
Ashwin,
Yep.
so usually like in MDP, we know that only state changes, but environment is known, right?
Yes.
And if you are assuming the environment unknown, that will be POMDP, right?
No, that's not true. We just assume that so in partially observed, what happens is that you don't observe the state, and instead of the state, you have a different observation that you observe, right?
Yes.
Right. For example, you have you're at a certain uh, let's say there's a map, and instead of seeing your position in the entire map, you only see what is in front of you. Right. That would be in the observation, but the state is where you are in the map, right? But here we just assume that we don't know the transition function.
Okay, we don't know the transition function, but we know the next position over, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, I'm at a state. I take an action and I go to the next state. I know that only when I go, only after I go. But till that, I don't know what. I cannot say that there's a probability that I will go to state one. There's probability that I'll go to state two. That information is not known to me.
So you don't have a transition model available.
Exactly. Yes. Or the reward model.
Okay. But in general, maybe I don't know, but reward function is usually are not available. Even you have a transition function, because that has come from the maybe engineering, right? Transition model.
Yep. I see. Reward
Like
function
if I have a robotics, so I know the maybe physics or maybe dynamics, so I can tell that what will be the next step. But reward is like a policy, right?
No, but how? But you will know the cost function, right? Or at least you will know what cost function you are trying to optimize.
Okay, so then that with that assumption, some cost function I will be taking, right?
Exactly. So here that cost function is not available in a closed form to us. I get only samples from the cost function when I take an action.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So that was clear, right? Also, was the difference between POMDP and MDP also clear?
Yes.
Right. So just to reiterate, in POMDP, instead of observing S, you will observe O, and there's a probability that you are in state S conditioned on the observation O. Right. So that is completely not there here. You're only with the state space. There's no additional observations. Right. So yeah, given that we don't know the transition function or the reward function, how do we work? So it's basically exactly like how we live in the world, right? So we do some action and we don't know what is going to happen, but underlying there is like some assumption, some model which dictates how things work. And same thing about what is right and wrong, right? We play a bunch of actions, we don't know if we did the correct thing, we only know after we did it, right? So we can do that and we finally observe whether you won the game or lost the game, and then you can come back and refine your actions next time when you play it. So it's exactly like how we kind of live in this world. So how do we work? So we gather experiences. So what are experiences? Experiences is the tuple: state, action, next state, and reward, right? So I gather it. This is my data set. So you can now see how I'm slowly connecting RL and standard supervised learning that we have seen so far, right? So these are experiences. So basically it says that I was at state S and I played action A, and this is the state I went to, and I collected this much reward, right? So you have now the trajectory information is lost, and you only have these experiences that you kind of store. And now we try to approximate unknown quantities. What are the unknown quantities? Which is, we want to either approximate the optimal policy or the optimal value function, right? Either with the V or Q, and then we are done. So that is the fundamental problem that we have.
Ashwin, one more things. Okay, so when you say the reward in this set, so if I don't have any function, how would I get the reward R? Because if
so the function is not known to me, but the function exists. So when I play an action, I get a sample from it.
Okay, so some distribution I have to define, right?
The distribution is defined and it's underlying. It's not known to me.
Okay.
So I basically I'm at state A, state S, and play an action A, and from R of S comma A, which exists, I get a sample from that.
Okay, you will get a sample. Okay.
Yeah, just that I don't know the form of R of S of A, because if I know the form, I can just go and solve using this equation, right?
Yes.
Because if I know R of S of A, and if I know the transition function, which is P of S dash given S comma A, I can just solve this equation, and I'll get the optimal value in the Q function, and I get the optimal policy as well. Right.
Okay.
So here, and you can see that I would take a summation over all possible next states. And compute, I should know what is the probability of going to all possible next states. And because there's no way I can compute this equation without P and R known to me.
Yes.
But just but of course, P and R exist in the model, right? So one way, so this is known as model-based RL. So one way people do that is because we don't know P and R, you can estimate P and R. So basically, I am at state S, and I can take multiple actions and see which state I go to, and I can build an empirical model of the probability of the transition probability. And similarly, I can build an empirical, basically take an average reward. So I was at state S, and I took action A 10 times, and I got average reward of 0.5, right? So in that sense, I can build an empirical reward model and a transition probability model, and I can use these approximate quantities to get my to do value iteration.
So model is known, then it's like you just solving these equations, right?
Yeah.
Well, either I get from the estimation or you pay exactly known to me, whatever.
Exactly, correct. So in the version of RL that I'm going to discuss right now, we assume that we don't know these we don't know either the estimated transition probability or the exact one. We don't know either any of that.
Okay.
Right. So the way that we seek is that we learn by trial and error. So for trial and error, we gather a lot of data, right? So, and now let's see how we learn. Right. So where does deep learning come into picture? So before I discuss the learning framework, let's discuss this, right? So the issue is that I can have a lot of the state space can be very, very large, right? So and all my algorithms are S square A, so it can have its own challenges. Right. So let's say value iteration, right? If I'm using that, it's again S square A. So it doesn't scale to high dimensional states. So let's say if I have an RGB image, so it's like you'll have something like 180, 1080 cross 3, 1080 cross 3, right? That would be one image. So if I have multiple images like this, so there are like the number of all possible images, right? It's very huge. So now I cannot do a value iteration update in this space, right? Because I have like 180 cross 180 cross 3, and each of the pixels can take 256 values. So the all possible states is like very, very large, right? So how do I do this? So the solution is deep learning, where I learn a deep network. I learn a deep network that takes this image and puts this in a low dimensional representation space. So like just like how we saw last time, like you can take an image and learn one feature, right? And feature is like 200 dimensions or whatnot, right? So now I've reduced this thing. And the other nice thing about having to learn is that we make this assumption, which is like similar states have similar actions, right? So there's some sort of smoothness that you kind of assume the moment you use any sort of learning, not just deep learning, right? So what deep learning essentially does is that it allows you to learn better features, and in that way you don't have to iterate over all possible states, which can be very, very large. So let's go over how this is done. So in deep or Q learning, we are trying to approximate Q star of S comma A with a deep network, right? So and that is a value-based version of it, and then you have the policy-based version of it, where you're directly trying to predict the action, right? So I get a state S, and I input the state S to the neural network, and the output of the state is an action, right? So that is the policy-based version of RL. And finally, you have model-based RL, which is just what I discussed right now, where you try to approximate the transition function using your data and the transition and the reward function. And you use this in your value iteration or some other planning algorithm to directly get the optimal policy. So let's do the deep Q-learning part. So what Q-learning and deep Q-learning only differ in the fact that you're using a linear network to approximate the Q function, or you're using a deep network, right? So here you can see that Q of S, I see. I don't know why this equation got much, but anyways. So you can see that the Q of S comma A is dependent on the weight and the bias, and you get the following form, which is like W transpose S plus the bias, right? So this is like a linear equation that is trying to approximate the Q function. So the linear version has like a bunch of theoretical guarantees. So you can show convergence and so on. But yeah, I'm not going to discuss those things here. So how does deep Q-learning differ? It differs in the sense that you input the images to the to a connet or like some sort of a deep network, and it tries to approximate the Q value, right? So and theta are like the underlying parameters of the connet, just like W and B in the linear version. So let's go over the algorithm. So we have collected a data set, which is like the experiences that I mentioned here, the S, A, S prime, and R, right? And we want a Q function that satisfies the optimal, the Bellman optimality equation, right? So what is it? It is basically telling Q star of S of A is just like can be recursively written based on the reward and the same Q star function. So if we are able to find a Q function that satisfies this, then it means that we have arrived at the optimal Q function. That is the assumption that we that is the whatever the technique that we are using to arrive at the Q function, right? So the way you do this is you minimize the Bellman error. So what is that? So it's basically I just move things around. So I'm trying to minimize the error. If I move the right RHS to the LHS, then you get a term, right? I'm trying to minimize that to make it to 0, because that would be true if Q was Q star, right? So the way I do that is like Q of S comma A, which is like what I predicted just now, right? That should be the same as the reward that I got plus gamma times the previous Q function. The previous Q function is like just from the previous iteration, right? Before I updated my parameters. So I try to minimize the squared loss of this quantity, right? Is this clear, or does anyone have questions at this point? Good, let me go ahead. So yeah, so I'm just minimizing the squared Bellman error. So basically, if I minimize this, it means that this equation is being satisfied, right? If I'm able to drive this down to 0, and usually not possible in practice. So we try to make this as small as possible. So it's now just like any other machine learning loss, right? So this is my data set, and this is my loss function, right? And I'm using a deep network or a linear network to approximate this, to learn this mapping, right? So that is the basic form of deep Q-learning. So let's go over that part. So I collect a data set, which is S, A, S prime, R, right? And then the forward pass is like I get the state, it goes through the Q network, and I'm predicting all the Q values for each action, right? So if I have 10 actions, then I predict all the 10 Q values that come from this particular state. And exactly, right? Like, so here the state can be like a bunch of images that I observed, and then the Q network is like some sort of a, like, if an image, I can use a connet or like some sort of a deep network, and I'm finally predicting the Q value at for each action. So I get Q S comma A for all possible actions. Yeah, and as I said before, the loss is nothing but the squared Bellman error. And I can differentiate because it's possible. I just like do standard back propagation, and I update my parameters of the Q network. So one thing that I'm not going to cover a lot in this lecture is how to gather the experience data set. So one very simple way of thinking about this is that I use a random policy and to execute in the environment, and I collect the trajectories from this random policy and use that to construct my experiences, right? So there are more smarter ways of getting data, but this is like a simple enough assumption that is both practical And in fact, if you're trying to derive any theory, this is the assumption that you use. You try to use a fairly exploratory or like a fairly random policy and try to get a lot of data and use that to learn what happened. So what I mean by this is that what I mean by the fact that RL is hard here is that you have to interact a lot with the environment. There's a whole exploration issue, right? So you have to explore a lot to really arrive at the optimal policy, which makes RL generally a hard problem, right? And especially think about it, like let's say the situation is like risky, right? Like let's say we have actual robots or we have a self-driving car or something, and think how impractical this problem is if you have a random agent executing in the world to gather data so that I can have a better self-driving car, right? It's just impossible. It just makes no sense to have like a random agent driving in our roads, right? So in that sense, this problem becomes hard and impractical. So let's take a small example that is of playing Atari games. So this paper came out in 2013 or 2014, which actually rekindled a lot of interest in RL and deep learning and so on. So the objective is to play some of these video games and achieve the highest score. The state is just the raw pixel inputs, so it is like just an image that I get as a state input, and the action is basically whatever the game has as controls, like left, right, up, down, and so on, whatever is there in the joystick, right? And the reward is basically the score increase, the whatever the new score that I get after each action that I play, right? So you can learn a queue function that goes from the image you can learn a queue network that goes from the image to all the queue values, and you can get the optimal policy, right? How do you get the optimal policy? It's just like the max of a q of s comma a, right? So basically you play the action that has the maximum q value, right? So this is my network, and I just sample from the predicted q values and go ahead, or I can just take the maximum value. All these versions are okay. So yeah, you can see a bunch of trained Q agents on YouTube or whatever. They work pretty well, and you get very impressive results with like a few hours of training. Yeah. So finally, the last part in this lecture that I'm going to cover is like policy-based methods, where I don't need to directly learn the Q function, and I just like learn the policy itself. So yeah, so let's just do a small recap of how the zoom back and try to understand the broad picture. So if I do know the transition function and the reward function, right, I can use some sort of a planning algorithm like value or a policy iteration, and I can get to the optimal policy, right? But if I don't know the transition or the reward function, what I did is that I estimated Q values from data, right? I collected all the experiences, estimated the Q values by minimizing the Bellman residual, and I got the Q function, and I used that to obtain my optimal policy, right? So there is something more, which is model-based RL, which I discussed right now, which is reward function, and use that to do planning, and with that I get an optimal policy, right? So that is the model-based learning route. The other thing is I'm going from transition function and directly to the optimal policy, right? So this is what we are trying to do in this part of this lecture. So let's see, right? So you have a class of policies defined by the parameter theta, right? So we directly go from state and try to predict which action to use, right? So theta can be anything, right? Like I can have a deep network here that goes from the state to the action that is required. So let's okay, let's go over this math. So the cost function, the j of pi, is nothing but total reward, total expected total reward. I have removed the discounting that I was like, I had before. It doesn't matter. I can always have the discounted reward as well, right? So basically, I want a policy that maximizes my cost function, right? So pi star is nothing but argmax of the cost function. So here what I want in policy learning is that I want the parameters that define the optimal policy, right? So the pi star has a theta star, and I want to find this theta star. So what is the theta that allows me to maximize my reward, right? That is the question that I'm asking, because once I know the theta uniquely defines the policy pi, right? So that is the question I have here. You can see there's now how it's already looking very similar to our machine learning objectives, right? I have a parameter and I have an objective function, which if differentiable, then I can learn using gradient descent, right? Yeah. So let's do this. So you have the probability of a trajectory, right? It is what is the probability of a trajectory? It is nothing but the entire chain, right? The probability of the entire trajectory is given by probability of the particular action conditioned on the particular state, and then times the transition probabilities, right? What is the probability that I go to st plus 1 conditioned on st and at, right? So you can see that I can just write the same thing. Instead of writing in this expectation of the total reward, I can just write this as like expectation of a particular trajectory, right? Given that I sample a trajectory from the probability of over all possible trajectories, what is the reward that it achieves, right? R of tau is nothing but this expectation, right? So I just rewrote how we had everything before. That's it. So I want to find the theta that maximizes my reward per trajectory, right? So the cost function, as you can see, is basically this, right? I expected total reward, where total reward as the reward of the trajectory, right? So I'm just trying to rewrite this again. As you saw, the trajectory can be split into the action probability of the playing a certain action, and the probability of that I go to the next state, given that I'm at S and A, right? And what is the reward I get after this point, right? So you can approximate this empirically, right? So this I'm just replacing the expectations, and instead of that expectation, it is coming from a few trajectories that I estimated, right? Yeah. So let's see how reinforce works. Reinforce is like the basic algorithm that does this thing. So I sample trajectories. So S1, A1, whatever to S capital AT. I sample all my trajectories. So I get like some n trajectories, right? And I compute my policy gradient. So what is the, I'll get to this part in a bit. So this is my gradient with respect to the cost function. And I use this to update my policy, right? So I'll get to this form in a bit, but you see how I'm using my gradient of the cost function and using that to update my policy parameters. And I do this for a while till my whole algorithm converges. That is the basic sketch of the policy learning algorithm. So let's do this part. Bear through a small derivation with me, which is I have the gradient of the cost function. The cost function is nothing but expectation of the trajectories and the reward of the that particular trajectory, right? I take the gradient, right? So I just expanded the expectation and wrote it as like an integral here, right? Integral, and this is like the distribution of the trajectories, right? So I interchange the integration and the order of the, sorry, not the expectation. I change the order of the expectation, basically the integral and the gradient, right? So I move the gradient inside. And then what I'm doing is I'm multiplying and dividing it by the probability, the policy itself. So, right, it is like pi theta of tau is the probability of that trajectory, right? And you can see that I'm using this trick, which is known as the log derivative trick, which basically says that the gradient of the log of pi of tau is just given by the gradient. Basically, I'm using the fact that the gradient of the log is just d pi by dx by x, right? I'm just using that fact. And now I can write this in this way, right? So what does this allow me? This allows me this final form, which says that now I can sample actions and I can just use the log of the policy, the gradient of the log, instead of using the gradient of the expectation. So this is a harder quantity to estimate as opposed to the gradient of the log function, right? So this is how I got my policy gradient term. So I just replace, substituting it in this form. So the gradient which is coming as expectation under the tau, and what am I taking the expectation of? I'm taking the expectation of the gradient of the log of this policy times the reward function. So let us write this down. Explicitly, what does this mean? This means that, uh, this is the log of the probability of the first state, and then the probability that I play a certain action, and the probability of the transition functions. Right? This the expansion of the probability of the trajectory. Right? This I multiply by the total reward that I get. Right? Um, right. So you can see that once I do it this way, it need not depend on the transition function probabilities and all the initial state probabilities, right? Yeah. So now what is the form that I have? Basically here I'm just replacing this with the action probabilities. The basically condition only on the only on pi theta, right? And I'm just rewriting r of tau as just like the summation, right? Basically you're back to the definition of tau where I have explicitly stated the st and at, right? So yeah, so let's see how this looks. So I get an image st, I pass it through some sort of a connet, and I get some sort of at that I try to do, and I do it multiple times, and I get the cumulative reward. And I use this equation, which is like the gradient of the cost function, and update my parameters and go on, right? That is the version of the policy gradient algorithm. So to reiterate, so I run the policy and sample trajectories, use that to compute the policy gradient, update my policy, and come back and collect more samples and so on. That is the basic sketch of the reinforced algorithm, right? So you can play Pong from pixels, which says like, okay, I have an image, and then I'm trying to learn what action to play directly. So there's a nice demo online and like some code as well. I encourage you to look at it, right? So how does this work? So raw pixels, I use a neural network and try to directly predict the probability of moving up, right? Which is moving up for the board or whatever that I'm using, right? So yeah, just to go over this a bit more, essentially this picture is just illustrating, going back and illustrating the difference between supervised and RL. So I have an image, I do a forward pass, get the probabilities. Instead of learning via reinforce, in supervision, I would have directly given you which action to play, the supervision for that, and I do a backward pass. Instead of that, I get my probabilities. I execute this in the real environment. I get a reward finally after my game is done, and I use that, the total reward of the trajectory, to update my parameters, right? So that is the difference between RL and supervised learning. But you can see that the fundamental architecture doesn't really change. Yeah. So here it's like, so what is the cumulative reward? So you can see that the eventual reward, right? So the eventual reward in the equations, it would be the total reward that I'm getting at the end of the trajectory, right? So essentially, if you see this, in supervised learning, I get each of these, which is like up, down, up, up. This would be my data that I'm getting to train. But in RL, I only get the final one, which is like whether I won or lost the whole game, right? So I'm trying to learn what actions to choose, which is like the sequences of up, down, and so on, based on only the final reward of what happened, and not each of these supervisions. So just to give you, just to simplify it a bit more, all the policy gradients or the reinforced algorithm does is that it formalizes the concept of trial and error, right? So if basically I play a sequence of actions, right? And if the reward is high, right, for these sequence of actions, then this probability is increased. And if this reward is low, then this probability is decreased, right? So you can think of this as like a person that is acting, and this is like a critic, right? So so you basically, the reward functions tells whether my actions were good or not, right? So I'm using the total reward function to in some way criticize my sequence of actions that I played. right? So this exact words I used for a specific reason. So you can see that um, I'll get to that in a bit, right? So let's get to issues with policy gradients. Credit assignment is hard. So it basically does not tell which action led to increase in the reward. It only tells that these entire sequence of actions led to an increase in reward, right? So it has an issue of variance, which leads to unstable training, but there are methods to correct this, which I won't be, okay, I do have this here. Okay. Uh, so basically there's something called a baseline that I can subtract from my reward, and this is used to reduce the variance in my training. Okay. Uh, right, as I mentioned, so you can see that this is exactly similar to like some of the value iteration kind of approaches, right? So I have my actions, and based on these actions I'm getting a reward, and this reward is essentially criticizing or judging how well these actions were, right? This concept can be used to get like a bunch of general um, uh, framework of algorithms, right? So which is known as the actor critic algorithm. So I use an actor to sample trajectories, and instead of using the reward function, right, evaluate or critic my policy. So actor critic is just that exactly the same as the reinforce algorithm, just that instead of using the reward function, I use a Q function, a learn Q function to critic my actions. So what is the advantage? The reward is very sparse. So in the sense that I can get it only at the end of my terminal, or I can get it only at a few states. Instead of that, the Q function is more dense. So I get more specific feedback, right? So that is in that sense, the actor critic is like a more practical version of the reinforced algorithm. Yeah, right. So just to iterate the fact, Q function is not known to us as well. So I have to learn Q function and the policy together. So in some way, the actor critic is like a mixture of both the policy gradients that I covered right now and the Q learning that I covered like a while before, right? So yeah. So the algorithm is very simple. I sample the reward and the next state. So basically, I get all my experiences, and I evaluate the actor using the critic. So the fact that I played a certain action, the goodness of that action is basically evaluated using the Q function, right? So and then I use that to update my policy parameters. So this is just the policy gradient equation here, and then I update the critic using by minimizing the Bellman error, right? So I'm learning both the critic, which is the Q function, and the policy, which is pi theta, as I go. Okay, there's another version of the actor critic, which is known as the advantage actor critic, where I just replace the Q function with the advantage function, which is known as Q pi theta minus basically the Q value minus the V function, right? So anyways, the broader theme is that you can replace this critic with a much better version. So there are many variants, right? So you can keep you can always replace a more accurate or a more something that you believe is like a better version of the better approximation of the reward function. You can put it here, and you get different classes of algorithms of the actor critic algorithm. So in summary, I kind of covered policy gradients here, and how actor critic algorithms work as well. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Aswin. So anyone has a question?
So on the 96 slide, you cancelled out two terms. Can you tell me why did you cancel out?
Sure. Just give me a moment. This one, right?
So Aswin, I'll just stop recording. So we do
Sure, sure.
and then we'll keep discussing.